A black judge suddenly collapses in court after recognizing the familiarity of the prisoner's necklace during the hearing session. What is the connection of that necklace to Judge Melinda, and what dark secrets does it hold? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Judge Melinda Turner stood before the mirror in her chambers, adjusting her black robe with practiced precision. Her hair was neatly pinned back, and her piercing blue eyes reflected years of wisdom and experience. At 58, she carried herself with the poise of someone who had dedicated her life to upholding justice. As she prepared for another day in court, Melinda's mind wandered through the corridors of her long career. She had presided over countless cases, always striving to be fair and just. Her reputation as a tough but compassionate judge was well earned, and she took pride in the positive impact she had made on so many lives. But beneath her composed exterior, a familiar ache tugged at her heart. Today marked 15 years since her daughter, Lily, had disappeared without a trace. The pain of not knowing what had happened to her child was a wound that never truly healed. Melinda closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. "Oh, Lily," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Where are you, sweetheart?" With a deep breath, she pushed the grief back down, locking it away as she had done countless times before. There was work to be done, lives that needed her attention and guidance. Settling behind her desk, Melinda opened the file for her first case of the day. The name Amelia Carson stared up at her from the crisp white paper. The young woman, barely in her 20s, was charged with drug possession. As Melinda read through the details, she couldn't help but see echoes of her own daughter in Amelia's story. "Another lost soul," Melinda murmured, her fingers tracing the words on the page. She had seen so many young people like Amelia, their lives derailed by addiction and poor choices. Each time, it stirred something deep within her, a mix of compassion and an overwhelming desire to help. For a brief moment, Melinda allowed herself to wonder, could she have done more for Lily? Could she have prevented her daughter's disappearance if she had noticed the signs earlier? The weight of these unanswered questions pressed heavily on her shoulders. Shaking off the memories, Melinda refocused on Amelia's case. She had a job to do, a duty to uphold the law while also considering the human element in each situation. It was a delicate balance, one she had spent years perfecting. As she gathered her notes and prepared to enter the courtroom, Melinda steeled herself for the day ahead. Little did she know that this case would stir up emotions she had long tried to bury, setting in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything she thought she knew about justice, forgiveness, and the power of second chances. As Melinda entered the courtroom, the familiar hush fell over the room. She took her place at the bench, her presence commanding respect from everyone present. With a nod to the bailiff, she signaled for the proceedings to begin. "Case number 2574, State versus Amelia Carson," the court clerk announced. Melinda's eyes scanned the courtroom, finally resting on the young woman standing before her. Amelia Carson looked small and vulnerable, her shoulders hunched as if trying to disappear into herself. Her long, dark hair hung limply around her face, partially obscuring her features. "Ms. Carson," Melinda began, her voice steady and clear, "you stand accused of drug possession. How do you plead?" As Amelia raised her head to respond, something caught Melinda's eye. Around the young woman's neck hung a delicate silver chain, and at the end of it, Melinda's breath caught in her throat. The pendant. It was unmistakable. A small, intricately carved cross. It was identical to the one Lily had worn, the one Melinda had given her for her 16th birthday just weeks before she disappeared. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Melinda's heart began to race, pounding so loudly she was sure everyone in the courtroom could hear it. Her vision blurred, the faces before her becoming indistinct shapes. "Your Honor?" The prosecutor's voice sounded distant, as if coming from underwater. "Are you all right?" Melinda tried to speak to regain control, but her mouth felt dry, her tongue heavy and unresponsive. The necklace seemed to fill her entire field of vision, bringing with it a flood of memories. Lily's delighted smile as she opened the gift, the way the pendant had glinted in the sunlight the last time Melinda had seen her daughter. The courtroom began to spin, the walls closing in around her. Melinda gripped the edge of the bench, her knuckles turning white with the effort to stay upright. But it was too much. The weight of 15 years of grief and unanswered questions crashed down upon her all at once. Melinda stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. And then, without warning, she crumpled, sliding from her chair onto the floor of the courtroom. Gasps and cries of alarm erupted throughout the room. The bailiff rushed forward, calling for someone to dial 911. Lawyers and spectators alike stood frozen in shock, watching as the usually composed Judge Turner lay motionless on the ground. Amidst the chaos, Amelia stood rooted to the spot, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Her hand unconsciously went to the necklace at her throat, unaware of the storm of emotions it had unleashed. The courtroom erupted into chaos as Judge Melinda Turner lay motionless on the floor. Voices shouted, chairs scraped against the hardwood, and the urgent wail of sirens pierced the air. Paramedics rushed in, their faces grim as they tended to the fallen judge. Amelia watched, frozen in place, as they lifted Melinda onto a stretcher. Her hand clutched the cross pendant, a gesture of comfort she'd developed over the years. She had no idea of the turmoil her simple necklace had caused. At the hospital, Melinda drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time she opened her eyes, the stark white ceiling tiles reminded her where she was and why. The necklace, Lily's necklace. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one more heart-wrenching than the last. "Lily," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "Oh, my sweet Lily." Nurses came and went, checking her vitals and offering reassuring smiles. But Melinda barely noticed them. Her thoughts were consumed by memories of her daughter, her laugh, her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she was excited, and always the image of that cross necklace. As the hours ticked by, Melinda's shock gave way to determination. She needed answers. She needed to talk to Amelia. The girl with Lily's necklace held the key to unlocking 15 years of questions and heartache. "I have to speak with her," Melinda muttered, trying to sit up in her hospital bed. A gentle hand pressed her back down. "You need to rest, Judge Turner," the nurse said kindly. "Whatever it is, it can wait until you're stronger." But Melinda knew it couldn't wait. Every moment that passed felt like another moment lost with Lily. She closed her eyes, feigning sleep, and began to plan. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through the hospital room window, the doctor gave Melinda a clean bill of health. "It seems you had a severe anxiety attack, Your Honor," he explained. "But your tests all came back normal. You're free to go home, but I recommend taking it easy for a few days." Melinda nodded, barely listening. Her mind was already racing ahead, figuring out how to arrange a private meeting with Amelia. As she signed her discharge papers, she felt a mix of dread and hope bubbling up inside her. "I'm coming, Lily," she whispered to herself as she left the hospital. "I'm going to find out what happened to you. I promise." Melinda's hands trembled as she smoothed her skirt, waiting in the small holding room at the courthouse. Her heart raced, a mix of hope and dread coursing through her veins. The door creaked open, and Amelia stepped in, her eyes wary and confused. "Please, sit down," Melinda said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Her voice was softer than usual, stripped of its courtroom authority. Amelia hesitated before lowering herself into the seat. "What's this about, Your Honor?" she asked, her tone guarded. Melinda took a deep breath. "I need to ask you about your necklace," she said, her eyes fixed on the delicate pendant hanging from Amelia's neck. Amelia's hand instinctively went to the necklace, her fingers curling protectively around it. "What about it?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. "Where did you get it?" Melinda pressed, leaning forward slightly. Amelia's eyes narrowed. "Why does it matter?" The tension in the room was palpable. Melinda could feel her chance for answers slipping away. "Please," she said, her voice cracking. "It's important." Something in Melinda's tone must have reached Amelia. Her posture softened slightly, and she sighed. I got it from a woman I met at a shelter a few years back, she said quietly. Her name was Lily. Melinda's breath caught in her throat. Lily? She whispered, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure Amelia could hear it. Amelia nodded, her eyes distant with memory. Yeah, Lily. She was kind, you know. Even though she was struggling herself, she always tried to help others. A sad smile played on Amelia's lips. She gave me this necklace right before... Before what? Melinda urged, her voice barely audible. Amelia's eyes met Melinda's, filled with a mixture of confusion and sympathy. Before she died, she said softly. It was sudden. An overdose, they said. The words hit Melinda like a physical blow. She felt the air leave her lungs, her vision blurring as tears filled her eyes. No, she whispered, shaking her head in denial. No, it can't be. Amelia leaned forward, concern etched on her face. Your Honor? Are you okay? But Melinda couldn't respond. The weight of the news crushed her, years of hope crumbling in an instant. Her Lily, her beautiful, troubled daughter, was gone, and she had never known, never had the chance to say goodbye. Melinda stumbled through her front door, her legs weak and her heart heavy. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a tomb of memories. She leaned against the wall, her eyes falling on the framed photos lining the hallway. Lily's smile beamed back at her from every image frozen in time. Oh, Lily, Melinda whispered, her voice breaking. She reached out, her fingers tracing the outline of her daughter's face in a photo taken on Lily's 16th birthday. It was the last picture they had taken together before Lily disappeared. The weight of grief and guilt pressed down on Melinda's shoulders as she made her way to the living room. She sank into her favorite armchair, the one where she used to read bedtime stories to Lily. The room was filled with reminders of her daughter's absence, a forgotten sweater draped over the back of the couch, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, waiting for a return that would never come. Melinda's mind raced with the information Amelia had shared. Lily, her precious daughter, had died alone in a shelter. The thought of Lily's final moments, without her mother by her side, tore at Melinda's heart. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks as she imagined Lily scared and alone, battling the demons that had driven her away from home. I should have done more, Melinda whispered to the empty room. I should have found you, Lily. I should have been there. The guilt was overwhelming. Melinda had spent years searching for Lily, hoping against hope that she would find her daughter alive and well. Now, knowing that Lily had died without ever reconciling with her mother, Melinda felt a deep, aching hollowness in her chest. As the afternoon light faded into evening, Melinda remained in her chair, lost in memories and regrets. She thought about Amelia, the young woman who had unknowingly brought her this devastating news. Despite her own pain, Melinda felt a growing sense of responsibility towards Amelia. Here was a young woman who had known Lily, who had been touched by her kindness even in her final days. Maybe, Melinda thought, her voice barely a whisper in the quiet room. Maybe I can help her, for Lily's sake. The idea took root, offering a small glimmer of purpose in the midst of her grief. Yet, even as she considered ways to reach out to Amelia, the pain of loss threatened to overwhelm her. Melinda closed her eyes, tears still falling as she grappled with the crushing reality of Lily's fate and the uncertain path that lay ahead. The next morning, Melinda arrived at the courthouse earlier than usual. Her eyes were puffy from a night of tears, but her resolve was firm. She needed to know more about Amelia's connection to Lily. As she settled into her chambers, Melinda reviewed Amelia's case file again. This time, she read between the lines, searching for clues about the young woman's life. She saw a pattern of struggle and hardship that reminded her of Lily's own troubled path. When it was time for Amelia's hearing, Melinda entered the courtroom with a mix of anticipation and dread. As Amelia was brought in, their eyes met. Melinda noticed a flicker of confusion in the young woman's gaze. "Ms. Amelia," Melinda began, her voice softer than usual, "I'd like to discuss your case further. Would you be willing to meet with me privately after this hearing?" Amelia's eyebrows furrowed. She glanced at her public defender, who nodded encouragingly. I guess so, Your Honor, Amelia replied hesitantly. After the hearing, Melinda led Amelia to a small conference room. The air felt thick with tension as they sat across from each other. Amelia, Melinda started, her voice catching slightly. I'd like to know more about your relationship with Lily. Amelia's posture stiffened. Why? She asked, her tone defensive. What's it to you? Melinda took a deep breath. Lily was my daughter, she admitted, her eyes glistening. I lost her 15 years ago, and I've been searching for answers ever since. Amelia's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with suspicion. So what? You think because I knew her, I'm some kind of… what? Charity case? No, that's not it at all, Melinda insisted, trying to keep her composure. I just want to understand what happened to her and maybe help you in the process. Amelia leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. I don't need your help, she said flatly. And I don't want to be your pet project or whatever this is. Melinda felt a pang of frustration. Amelia, please. I'm not trying to judge you. I just want to understand. Understand what? Amelia snapped. How your perfect daughter ended up friends with a junkie like me. Is that it? The words stung Melinda, bringing tears to her eyes. That's not fair, she whispered. Amelia stood up abruptly. Life's not fair, Your Honor. Lily taught me that. Now, if we're done here, I'd like to go back to my cell. As Amelia turned to leave, Melinda called out, Wait, please. I'm sorry if I've upset you. I miss her so much. Amelia paused at the door, her hand on the handle. For a moment, her tough exterior seemed to crack, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. But then she shook her head and left without another word, leaving Melinda alone with her grief and unanswered questions. Melinda sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of papers and a laptop open to a search engine. Her eyes were tired, but she couldn't stop. She had to find out more about Lily's life in those final years. She picked up her phone and dialed another shelter. Hello, this is Judge Melinda Turner. I'm looking for information about a woman who might have stayed with you about 5 years ago. Her name was Lily. As Melinda continued her search across town, Amelia paced in her small apartment. The judge's words echoed in her mind, mixing with memories of Lily. She felt angry and confused. Why did this woman suddenly care about her? Was it just because of Lily? The next day, Melinda arrived at the community center where Amelia volunteered. She spotted the young woman helping a group of teenagers with homework. Amelia, Melinda called softly. Can we talk? Amelia's shoulders tensed. She turned to face the judge, her expression guarded. What do you want now? Melinda took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize for how I approached things before. I realize I may have come on too strong. Yeah, you think? Amelia scoffed. She crossed her arms, creating a barrier between them. I understand why you're upset, Melinda said. But I genuinely want to help you, Amelia. Not just because of Lily, but because I see potential in you. Amelia's eyes narrowed. You don't even know me. How can you see anything? I've been doing some research, Melinda admitted. I've learned about the work you do here, how you mentor these kids. That takes strength and compassion. For a moment, Amelia's tough exterior wavered, but then she shook her head. So what? You did your homework. That doesn't mean you understand me or my life. Melinda stepped closer, her voice soft. Then help me understand. Please, Amelia. I'm not here to judge you. I just want to listen. Amelia's gaze flickered with uncertainty. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken words and fragile trust. Finally, Amelia spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Lily was the only person who ever really saw me. Not my mistakes, not my past, just me. She paused, swallowing hard. And now you're here, trying to do the same thing. But I don't know if I can trust that. Melinda's heart ached at the pain in Amelia's voice. She wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but she knew it was too soon. the emotional distance between them still felt vast and uncertain. Melinda sat across from Amelia in a quiet corner of the community center. The tension between them had eased slightly, but Amelia's guard was still up. Melinda took a deep breath, her voice gentle. "Can you tell me about your life before you met Lily?" she asked. Amelia's eyes darted away, focusing on a spot on the wall. "It wasn't pretty," she said softly. "I grew up bouncing between foster homes. Never felt like I belonged anywhere." As Amelia spoke, Melinda listened intently, her heart breaking for the young woman's struggles. Amelia described a childhood marked by neglect and instability, which led her to seek comfort in all the wrong places. "I started using drugs when I was 15, Amelia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It numbed the pain, made me feel like I could escape." Melinda nodded, fighting back tears. She thought of Lily, wondering if her own daughter had faced similar struggles. Amelia continued, describing her descent into addiction and the spiral that followed. She talked about nights spent on the streets, the constant fear, and the desperation that drove her to make choices she now regretted. "And then I met Lily at the shelter," Amelia said, her voice softening. "She was different. She saw past all the mess, saw me for who I could be." Melinda's resolve to help Amelia grew stronger with each word. She saw not just a troubled young woman, but someone who had faced unimaginable hardships and was still fighting to make a better life. As their conversation wound down, Melinda thanked Amelia for her honesty. She left the community center with a heavy heart, but a renewed sense of purpose. The next day, Melinda received a call from one of the shelters she had contacted. The woman on the other end of the line had news about Lily. "Judge Turner, we found some information that might interest you," the shelter worker said. "It seems Lily had a child before she passed away, a baby girl she gave up for adoption." Melinda's world tilted on its axis. Her breath caught in her throat and she gripped the edge of her desk to steady herself. A grandchild? The possibility had never crossed her mind. "Do you have any details about the adoption?" Melinda asked, her voice shaking. "I'm afraid not," the worker replied. "The records are sealed, but we do know it was a closed adoption, completed just months before Lily's death." As Melinda hung up the phone, her mind raced. Somewhere out there was a child, her grandchild, who might never know about their birth mother or their family history. The weight of this revelation settled on her shoulders, a mix of joy and sorrow that threatened to overwhelm her. She sat in silence for a long moment, processing this new information. Then, with trembling hands, she reached for her phone. She had to tell someone, had to share this earth-shattering news. But who? As she scrolled through her contacts, she realized there was only one person who might understand the complexity of her emotions right now. Melinda stood outside the community center, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath before pushing open the door. Inside, she found Amelia sorting through donated clothes. "Amelia, can we talk?" Melinda asked, her voice gentle but firm. Amelia looked up, her expression guarded. "What now, Judge Turner?" They moved to a quiet corner, sitting across from each other. Melinda's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. "I found out something about Lily," she began. "She had a child before she died. Did you know about this?" Amelia's eyes widened for a moment, then narrowed. She crossed her arms defensively. "Yeah, I knew," she said quietly. Melinda felt a mix of shock and hurt. "You knew? Why didn't you tell me?" "It wasn't my place," Amelia replied, her voice rising. "And honestly, I don't know much about it. Lily mentioned it once, but she wasn't close to the kid. It was a closed adoption." Melinda's mind reeled. She had a grandchild out there, one she'd never known about. The weight of this revelation pressed down on her. "I wish I had known," Melinda whispered, more to herself than to Amelia. Amelia's frustration bubbled over. "Look, Judge Turner, I get that you're trying to piece together Lily's life, but why do you keep coming to me? I can't give you the closure you're looking for." Melinda flinched at Amelia's words. "I'm sorry, I need to understand what happened to my daughter." "And what about me?" Amelia snapped. You only started caring about my case because of this connection to Lily. Do you even see me as a person or just a link to your daughter?" Melinda felt a wave of guilt wash over her. Had she been so focused on Lily that she'd forgotten about Amelia's own struggles? "I'm sorry," Melinda said softly. "You're right. I've been so caught up in my own grief that I haven't been fair to you." Amelia's anger seemed to deflate a little, but her guard remained up. "I get that you're hurting, Judge, but digging into my past, into Lily's past, it's not going to change anything. She's gone, and I'm just trying to move forward with my life." Melinda nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know, I wish I had known about this child. I wish I could have been there for Lily when she needed me most." The tension in the room was palpable, as both women sat in silence, each grappling with their own pain and regrets. Melinda's quest for answers led her to a small, run-down shelter on the outskirts of town. The peeling paint and worn sign spoke of years of neglect, but also of countless lives touched within its walls. As she stepped inside, the musty smell of old furniture and desperation hit her. A tired-looking woman at the front desk looked up. "Can I help you?" she asked. Melinda took a deep breath. "I'm looking for information about someone who might have stayed here years ago. Her name was Lily Turner." The woman's eyes softened with recognition. "Lily? Oh, I remember her. Such a sweet girl, despite everything she was going through." Melinda's heart clenched. "Can you tell me about her time here?" Over the next hour, Melinda listened as the woman shared stories of Lily's struggles with addiction, her efforts to get clean, and her kindness towards others in the shelter. Each word was like a knife to Melinda's heart, revealing a side of her daughter she had never known. "She talked about you sometimes," the woman said softly. "She wanted to make you proud, but she was scared to reach out." Tears streamed down Melinda's face as she thanked the woman and left the shelter. She sat in her car, overwhelmed by grief and guilt. How could she have been so unaware of Lily's suffering? Meanwhile, across town, Amelia paced in her small apartment. Judge Turner's sudden interest in her life had stirred up feelings she'd long tried to bury. Part of her wanted to open up, to share the impact Lily had on her life. But another part, hardened by years of disappointment, warned her to keep her distance. She picked up the necklace Lily had given her, running her fingers over its smooth surface. It was a reminder of the kindness she'd found in her darkest moments. But now it also felt like a burden, tying her to a past she was trying to escape. Amelia sighed, setting the necklace down. She didn't know how to feel about Judge Turner's involvement in her life. Was it genuine concern, or just a desperate attempt to connect with a lost daughter? Either way, Amelia wasn't sure she was ready to be the bridge between Melinda and her memories of Lily. As the sun set, both women found themselves lost in thought, grappling with the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. Melinda, armed with new knowledge of her daughter's life, felt both closer to Lily and more distant than ever. Amelia, caught between gratitude for Lily's friendship and wariness of Melinda's intentions, remained unsure of her next move. Melinda sat in her study, surrounded by the fragments of Lily's life she had collected over the past few weeks. Photos, letters, and testimonies from those who knew her daughter in her final years lay scattered across her desk. Each piece of information was a bittersweet revelation, filling in the gaps of Lily's story, but also highlighting how much Melinda had missed. As she sorted through the papers, her eyes fell on a photo of Amelia. The young woman's guarded expression reminded Melinda so much of Lily in her troubled years. A wave of compassion washed over her, mixed with a renewed sense of purpose. "I couldn't help Lily," Melinda whispered to herself, "but maybe I can help Amelia." The next day, Melinda arranged to meet Amelia at a local diner. As she waited, she rehearsed what she wanted to say, hoping to break through Amelia's defenses. Amelia arrived, her posture tense and eyes wary. She slid into the booth across from Melinda, her hands fidgeting with the necklace around her neck. "Thank you for coming," Melinda began, trying to keep her voice gentle. "I wanted to talk to you about your case and see if there's any way I can help." Amelia's eyes narrowed. "Why? Because I knew Lily? I'm not some project for you to work on, Judge Turner." Melinda flinched at the harshness in Amelia's voice. That's not it at all. I genuinely want to help you, Amelia. I've learned so much about what Lily went through, and I see now how difficult things must have been for you, too. You don't know anything about me, Amelia snapped, her walls visibly rising higher. Melinda took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. You're right. I don't know everything, but I'd like to, if you'll let me. I can help you find resources, maybe even a job, or… I don't need your charity, Amelia interrupted, her voice trembling slightly. I'm not Lily, and I'm not your chance to make things right. I can take care of myself. The tension between them grew thicker. Melinda could see the pain and fear behind Amelia's anger, but she didn't know how to break through. Every attempt to reach out seemed to push Amelia further away. I'm sorry if I've offended you, Melinda said softly. That wasn't my intention. I see how much Lily meant to you, and I thought maybe we could help each other. Amelia stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't need your help, and I don't want to be your connection to Lily. Please, just leave me alone. As Amelia stormed out of the diner, Melinda felt a deep sense of failure. She had hoped to bridge the gap between them, but instead she had only widened it. The weight of her inability to help Lily, and now Amelia, settled heavily on her shoulders. As the days passed, Melinda continued to reach out to Amelia, hoping to find a way to connect. Her persistence finally paid off when Amelia agreed to meet her at a quiet park on a sunny afternoon. They sat on a bench, the tension between them still palpable but slightly less intense than before. Amelia fidgeted with her necklace, a habit Melinda had come to recognize as a sign of her nervousness. I've been thinking, Amelia said softly, breaking the silence. Maybe I was too harsh before. It's just, talking about Lily isn't easy for me. Melinda nodded, careful not to push too hard. I understand. Take your time. Amelia took a deep breath. Lily, she saved my life, you know? When I met her at the shelter, I was at rock bottom. I didn't think I had anything left to live for. As Amelia spoke, her voice grew stronger. She told Melinda about the nights Lily had stayed up with her, talking her through the worst of her withdrawal symptoms. She shared how Lily had taught her to knit, giving her hand something to do when the cravings got bad. She always said that creating something beautiful could heal your soul, Amelia said, a small smile playing on her lips. Melinda listened intently, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and sorrow. Each story painted a picture of the woman Lily had become, flawed, struggling, but still full of compassion and strength. There was this one time, Amelia continued, when I was ready to give up on everything. Lily found me. She talked me down. She told me that every day we choose to keep going is an act of bravery. Tears welled up in Melinda's eyes. That sounds like something she would say, she whispered. Amelia nodded, her own eyes glistening. Lily wasn't perfect. She had her own battles, but she never stopped trying to help others, even when she was hurting. As Amelia shared more stories, Melinda felt a small sense of peace settle over her. The knowledge that Lily had made such a profound difference in someone's life, even during her darkest times, was a balm to her aching heart. Thank you for sharing this with me, Melinda said softly when Amelia finished. It means more than you know. Amelia gave a small nod, looking more vulnerable than Melinda had ever seen her. Lily, she talked about you sometimes. She always hoped she'd make you proud one day. Melinda's breath caught in her throat. She did, she managed to say, her voice thick with emotion. She really did. After her conversation with Amelia in the park, Melinda found herself emotionally drained. She needed someone to talk to, someone who could understand the turmoil she was experiencing. That evening, she called her longtime friend and colleague Sarah and invited her over for coffee. As they sat in Melinda's cozy living room, the judge poured out her heart. I just don't know if I'm doing the right thing, Sarah, Melinda said, her voice wavering. Every time I look at Amelia, I see Lily. I see all the ways I failed her. Sarah reached out and squeezed Melinda's hand. Oh, Mel, You can't keep blaming yourself for what happened to Lily. You did everything you could. Melinda shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. Did I? If I had just paid more attention, if I had seen the signs. Listen to me, Sarah said firmly. You were a good mother. Lily made her own choices. What happened to her wasn't your fault. Melinda wiped her eyes with a tissue. But now with Amelia, I feel like I have a second chance. But she keeps pushing me away. Maybe I'm just making things worse. Sarah leaned back, considering her words carefully. Mel, you can't change what happened with Lily, but you can make a difference in Amelia's life. It won't be easy, and it might not look the way you expect, but you have the power to help her. How can I help her if she won't let me in? Melinda asked, her voice barely above a whisper. By being there, Sarah replied. By showing her that someone cares, even when she pushes back. It might take time, but your persistence could be the very thing that saves her. Melinda nodded slowly, feeling a small spark of hope ignite in her chest. You're right. I can't give up on her. Lily wouldn't have given up. Sarah smiled warmly. Exactly. And remember, you're not alone in this. You have friends who support you, who believe in you. Lean on us when you need to. As the evening wore on, Melinda felt her resolve strengthen. She couldn't change the past, but she could still make a difference in the present. With renewed determination, she decided to continue reaching out to Amelia, no matter how difficult it might be. The morning sun had barely risen when Melinda's phone rang, jolting her awake. Her heart sank as she listened to the voice on the other end. Amelia had been arrested again, this time for armed robbery. The news hit Melinda like a punch to the gut. She dressed quickly, her hands shaking as she buttoned her blouse. How could this have happened? Just yesterday, Amelia had seemed to be making progress. They had shared a moment of connection, a glimmer of hope. Now it felt like all that had been shattered. She still has her ongoing trial. And now this? Melinda rushed to the courthouse, her mind racing. The possibility of Amelia facing a long prison sentence loomed large. As she entered the building, she caught sight of Amelia being led down the hallway in handcuffs. The young woman's eyes were red and puffy, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Amelia, Melinda called out, her voice cracking. What happened? Amelia looked up, her gaze filled with a mixture of shame and defiance. I'm sorry, Judge Turner. I messed up. Again. Melinda felt her heart breaking. She had invested so much hope in Amelia, seeing in her a chance to make amends for her perceived failures with Lily. Now, it seemed like that chance was slipping away. As Amelia was led into the holding cell, Melinda stood rooted to the spot. She felt a wave of despair wash over her. The last tangible connection she had to Lily was about to be lost. The necklace, the stories, the shared experiences. All of it would be locked away with Amelia. Melinda made her way to her chambers, closing the door behind her. She sank into her chair, feeling the weight of her grief and disappointment. Tears streamed down her face as she thought of Lily, of Amelia, of all the second chances that seemed to have slipped through her fingers. She picked up a framed photo of Lily from her desk, tracing her daughter's smiling face with her finger. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I've failed you both. The possibility of losing Amelia to the system felt like losing Lily all over again. Melinda knew she had to do something, but what? How could she help Amelia now, when the young woman had made such a grave mistake? Melinda took a deep breath, straightening her jacket as she prepared to enter the county jail. She had pulled some strings to ensure Amelia's case would be handled fairly. But now came the hard part, facing the young woman herself. The heavy metal door clanged shut behind her as she was led to the visitation area. Amelia sat at a small table, her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the scratched surface before her. She didn't look up when Melinda entered. Hello, Amelia, Melinda said softly, taking a seat across from her. Amelia's response was barely audible. Why are you here? Melinda's heart ached at the coldness in Amelia's voice. I wanted to see how you're doing, and to let you know that I'm making sure your case is handled fairly. Amelia finally looked up, her eyes hard and distant. Why bother? We both know how this ends. People like me don't get second chances." "That's not true," Melinda insisted, leaning forward. "There's always hope, Amelia. We can fight this together." A bitter laugh escaped Amelia's lips. "Fight what? My own stupidity? Face it, Judge Turner, I'm just repeating the same old mistakes. It's what I do best." Melinda felt her optimism faltering in the face of Amelia's cynicism. She reached out, wanting to offer some comfort, but Amelia flinched away. "I know it feels hopeless right now," Melinda said, her voice gentle. "But you're not alone in this. I believe in you, Amelia. I believe you can change your path." Amelia's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained hard. "You're wasting your time. I'm not worth it." The words hit Melinda like a physical blow. She saw in Amelia's despair a reflection of what Lily must have felt in her darkest moments. It made her all the more determined to help. "You are worth it," Melinda said firmly, "and I'm not giving up on you." As she left the jail, Melinda felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. She was more determined than ever to help Amelia, to give her the chance that Lily never had. But she also felt the crushing weight of her own limitations. She wasn't a miracle worker. She couldn't undo years of pain and mistrust with a few kind words. Melinda got into her car, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she refused to let Amelia slip away. For Lily's sake, for Amelia's sake, and for her own, she had to keep trying. As the days ticked down to Amelia's court date, Melinda threw herself into action. She spent long nights poring over legal documents, her desk cluttered with case files and coffee cups. The weight of Amelia's future pressed heavily on her shoulders. Melinda reached out to every contact she had in the legal system. She called in favors, pleaded Amelia's case to anyone who would listen. Her phone seemed to ring constantly, her voice growing hoarse from hours of negotiations. "Please, John," she said to an old colleague, her voice tight with desperation. "I know Amelia's made mistakes, but she deserves a chance at rehabilitation, not just punishment." As she worked, Melinda couldn't shake the image of Amelia's defeated face in the jail. The young woman's words echoed in her mind. "People like me don't get second chances." Melinda was determined to prove her wrong, but despite her best efforts, nothing was certain. The prosecutor was pushing for a harsh sentence, citing Amelia's previous offenses. Melinda's stomach churned with anxiety every time she thought about it. One evening, as she sat at her kitchen table surrounded by papers, Melinda's hands began to shake. The possibility that Amelia could be sentenced to years in prison loomed large in her mind. She thought of Lily, of all the chances her daughter never got, and her eyes filled with tears. "I can't fail her," Melinda whispered to herself, wiping her eyes. "I can't fail them both." As the court date drew nearer, Melinda's anxiety mounted. She tossed and turned at night, her mind racing with arguments and counter-arguments. During the day, she put on a brave face, trying to reassure Amelia during their meetings. "We're doing everything we can," Melinda told her, forcing a smile. "There's still hope, Amelia." But even as she said the words, doubt gnawed at her. The legal system she had served for so long now seemed like a labyrinth, full of dead ends and false hopes. Melinda found herself praying for a miracle, something she hadn't done since Lily disappeared. The day before the trial, Melinda stood in front of her mirror, straightening her suit. She looked tired, the lines on her face deeper than ever. But in her eyes, there was a fierce determination. She had done all she could. Now it was time to face the court and fight for Amelia's future. The courtroom buzzed with nervous energy as Melinda and Amelia waited for the judge to deliver the sentence. Melinda sat rigidly in her seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She stole glances at Amelia, who looked small and vulnerable in her orange jumpsuit. As the judge began to speak, Melinda held her breath. The words seemed to come in slow motion, each one falling like a heavy stone. "Sentenced to 1 year in prison." The gavel's sharp crack echoed through the room. Melinda's heart sank, and she felt a wave of defeat wash over her. She had fought so hard, pushed every boundary, and still it wasn't enough. Amelia's shoulders slumped as the reality of her sentence hit her. Her eyes, once filled with a flicker of hope, now dulled with resignation. She looked lost, abandoned by a system she never trusted in the first place. As the bailiff approached to lead Amelia away, Melinda stood up abruptly. Their eyes met across the courtroom. In that moment, Melinda's gaze held a fierce promise. "I won't leave you." It was a silent vow, one that Melinda intended to keep with every fiber of her being. Amelia's expression softened for just a second, a hint of surprise and maybe even gratitude passing over her face. But then the mask of indifference slipped back into place as she was led out of the courtroom. Melinda watched, her heart heavy, as Amelia disappeared through the door. The defeat stung, but beneath it, a new determination began to burn. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. Melinda straightened her shoulders, her mind already racing with plans for appeals, for prison visits, for anything she could do to help Amelia through this year. As the courtroom began to empty, Melinda remained standing, her eyes fixed on the door where Amelia had exited. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the fight ahead. 1 year. They had 1 year to turn things around, to prove that second chances were possible. Melinda gathered her things slowly, her movements deliberate as she processed the outcome. The weight of the situation pressed down on her, but she refused to let it crush her spirit. As she walked out of the courtroom, her steps were steady, her resolve strengthening with each passing moment. Melinda stood outside the prison gates, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The metal detector beeped as she passed through, and a guard led her to the visiting area. Amelia was already seated at one of the tables, her eyes downcast. As Melinda approached, Amelia barely looked up. "Hello, Amelia," Melinda said softly, taking a seat across from her. Amelia mumbled a greeting, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her prison uniform. Their first few visits were like this, awkward and stilted. Melinda would try to make conversation, asking about Amelia's day or how she was adjusting. Amelia's responses were short, often just a word or two. But Melinda didn't give up. Week after week she returned, her presence a constant in Amelia's uncertain world. On her 5th visit, Melinda noticed a small change. As she sat down, Amelia's eyes met hers for a moment longer than usual. "You came back," Amelia said, surprise evident in her voice. Melinda nodded, a small smile on her face. "I told you I would." From that day on, their conversations began to flow a little easier. Amelia started to open up, sharing small details about her life in prison, the classes she was taking, the books she was reading. Melinda listened intently, offering words of encouragement. "You're doing great, Amelia," she'd say. "This time here, it's not the end of your story. It's just a chapter." As the weeks turned into months, their visits became a lifeline for Amelia. She found herself looking forward to Melinda's arrivals, counting down the days between visits. One day, as Melinda was about to leave, Amelia reached out and touched her hand. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not giving up on me." Melinda felt tears prick her eyes. "I never will," she promised. As the seasons changed outside the prison walls, a transformation was taking place within. Amelia, once guarded and distant, began to show signs of change. With each passing week, her conversations with Melinda grew longer and more meaningful. One chilly autumn day, Amelia shared some news that made Melinda's heart swell with pride. "I've signed up for the GED program," Amelia said, a hint of excitement in her voice. "And I'm thinking about joining the addiction support group." Melinda reached across the table, gently squeezing Amelia's hand. "That's wonderful, Amelia. I'm so proud of you." Amelia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I never thought I'd say this, but I think I might have a chance at a real life when I get out of here." As winter turned to spring, Amelia threw herself into her studies. She spent hours in the prison library, poring over textbooks and practice tests. Melinda brought her extra study materials during visits, and they often spent time going over difficult concepts together. "You know," Amelia said one day, looking up from her math workbook, "I used to think people like you, judges, were all out to get me. But now..." Melinda waited patiently as Amelia struggled to find the right words. Now I see that you really do care, Amelia finished softly, and it makes me want to try harder. With each small victory, a good test score, a breakthrough in therapy, Amelia's confidence grew. And as Amelia blossomed, Melinda felt a weight lifting from her own heart. One warm summer afternoon, as they sat in the visiting room, Melinda noticed something different about Amelia. There was a new light in her eyes, a spark of hope that hadn't been there before. "I've been thinking a lot about Lily," Amelia said, her voice quiet but steady. "About how she helped me when I was at my lowest. I want to do that for someone else someday." Melinda felt tears well up in her eyes. "That's beautiful, Amelia. Lily would be so proud of you." As Amelia continued to share her dreams for the future, Melinda realized something profound. In helping Amelia, she had found a way to honor Lily's memory. The pain of losing her daughter would always be there, but now it was accompanied by a sense of peace. Weeks turned into months. The day of Amelia's release dawned bright and clear, full of promise. Melinda stood outside the prison gates, her heart pounding with anticipation. As the heavy doors swung open, she caught sight of Amelia, looking both nervous and hopeful. Amelia stepped into the sunlight, blinking as her eyes adjusted. When she saw Melinda waiting for her, her face broke into a tentative smile. Melinda opened her arms wide, and Amelia hesitated for just a moment before rushing into her embrace. "You're here?" Amelia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Of course I am," Melinda replied, holding her tight. "I promised I wouldn't leave you, remember?" As they pulled apart, both women wiped away tears. Melinda looked at Amelia with pride shining in her eyes. "You did it, Amelia. You're ready for your new start." Amelia nodded, taking a deep breath. "I'm scared," she admitted, "but I'm ready." Together, they walked to Melinda's car, their steps light with the promise of a new beginning. As they drove away from the prison, Melinda outlined the plans she had made. "I've found a halfway house that has a spot for you," she explained. "It's a good place with support services to help you transition back into society." Amelia listened intently, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "And work?" she asked hesitantly. Melinda smiled. "I've got a lead on that too. A friend of mine runs a community center. They're always looking for mentors who can connect with at-risk youth. With your experiences and your GED, you'd be perfect." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes again. "You really believe in me, don't you?" "I do," Melinda said firmly. "And more importantly, you've learned to believe in yourself." Over the next few weeks, Melinda helped Amelia settle into her new life. They visited the halfway house together, meeting the staff and getting Amelia comfortable in her new surroundings. Melinda was there for Amelia's job interview at the community center, offering a reassuring smile as Amelia nervously shared her story and her hopes for the future. With each passing day, the bond between them grew stronger. Amelia began to see Melinda not just as a mentor but as family. And Melinda, while never forgetting Lily, found her heart expanding to include Amelia in a way she never expected. One evening, as they shared a quiet dinner to celebrate Amelia's first month of freedom, Amelia reached across the table and took Melinda's hand. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything, for believing in me when no one else did, for giving me a chance at a real life." Melinda squeezed her hand, her eyes shining with affection. "You did the hard work, Amelia. I'm just grateful I could be here to see it." As Amelia stepped into the rehabilitation center, her heart raced with a mix of fear and determination. The building loomed before her, a symbol of both hope and challenge. Melinda stood by her side, a comforting presence in this new and daunting environment. "You've got this, Amelia," Melinda said softly, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. Amelia took a deep breath and nodded, her eyes fixed on the entrance. "I hope so," she whispered. The first few weeks of the program were grueling. Amelia found herself struggling with the strict routines, group therapy sessions, and the constant need to confront her past. There were nights when she lay awake, doubting herself and wondering if she had the strength to continue. During one particularly difficult session, Amelia broke down in tears. "I can't do this," she sobbed, her body shaking. "It's too hard. I'm not strong enough." But Melinda was there, steady as always. She visited Amelia regularly, offering words of encouragement and reminding her of how far she'd already come. "Remember why you're here, Amelia," Melinda said gently. "You're doing this for yourself, for your future. I believe in you, and I know you can do this." Slowly, day by day, Amelia began to see progress. She started to open up in group sessions, sharing her experiences and listening to others. The counselors noticed her efforts and praised her commitment. One afternoon, as Melinda visited, she found Amelia beaming with pride. "I got a certificate today," Amelia announced, her eyes shining, "for completing the first phase of the program." Melinda's face lit up with joy. "That's wonderful, Amelia. I'm so proud of you." As the weeks turned into months, Amelia's confidence grew. She began to take on more responsibilities within the program, even mentoring newcomers who were struggling as she once had. Melinda watched this transformation with a sense of awe and pride. She saw the strength that had always been within Amelia, now shining through for everyone to see. During one of their visits, Amelia shared her plans for the future. "I want to go back to school," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Maybe study social work. I want to help others like me, like Lily helped me." Melinda felt her heart swell with emotion. "That's a beautiful goal, Amelia, and I have no doubt you'll achieve it." As the weeks passed after her rehabilitation program, Amelia found herself drawn to the local community center. The bustling hub of activity reminded her of the shelter where she had first met Lily, and she felt a strong urge to give back. With Melinda's encouragement, Amelia applied for a position as a youth mentor at the center. Her own experiences and hard-won wisdom made her an ideal candidate, and she was quickly hired. On her first day, Amelia's hands trembled as she pinned on her name tag. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders, but it felt different now. Not crushing, but empowering. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, echoing the words Melinda had so often said to her. As Amelia began working with the teens at the center, she found a sense of purpose she had never known before. She recognized the pain and struggles in their eyes, the same ones she had battled for so long. One afternoon, a young girl named Tasha stormed into the center, anger radiating from her every movement. Amelia approached her carefully. "Rough day?" she asked gently. Tasha glared at her. "What do you know about it?" Amelia smiled softly. "More than you might think. Want to talk about it?" Over time, Amelia's genuine empathy and understanding broke through Tasha's defenses. She became a mentor and friend to many of the teens, offering them the support and guidance she wished she'd had at their age. Melinda visited the center often, her heart swelling with pride as she watched Amelia in action. She would stand back, observing as Amelia led group discussions or offered one-on-one support to troubled teens. One day, as Amelia was organizing an art therapy session, Melinda overheard her speaking to a group of teenagers. "I know it feels hopeless sometimes," Amelia said, her voice strong and steady. "But trust me when I say that you have the power to change your story. I've been where you are, and I found my way out. You can too." Melinda felt tears prick her eyes as she listened. The transformation in Amelia was remarkable. Gone was the defensive, angry young woman she had first met in the courtroom. In her place stood a confident, compassionate leader. As the session ended and the teens filed out, Amelia noticed Melinda standing nearby. She walked over, a bright smile on her face. "How long have you been here?" Amelia asked. Melinda's eyes shone with pride and joy. "Long enough to see what an amazing job you're doing. Amelia, you're changing lives here." Amelia blushed slightly, but her smile didn't waver. "I couldn't have done it without you, Melinda. You believed in me when no one else did." As they stood there, surrounded by the vibrant energy of the community center, both women felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. Amelia had found her calling, using her past to create a brighter future for others, and Melinda, watching Amelia thrive, felt a healing in her own heart that she had never thought possible. On a warm Sunday afternoon, Melinda and Amelia met at the local park. The sun dappled through the leaves, casting a gentle glow on the path as they walked side by side. Children's laughter echoed from the nearby playground, a cheerful backdrop to their thoughtful conversation. Amelia took a deep breath, her eyes shining with emotion. "Melinda," she began, her voice soft but steady, "I wanted to thank you for everything." Melinda turned to look at her, a gentle smile on her face. "Oh, Amelia." "No, really," Amelia insisted. "You've done so much for me. When we first met, I was angry and scared. I didn't trust anyone, especially not someone like you." She paused, shaking her head at the memory. "But you never gave up on me, even when I pushed you away." They found a bench overlooking a small pond and sat down. Melinda reached out and squeezed Amelia's hand. "You know," Melinda said, her voice thick with emotion, "I think we've saved each other in different ways." Amelia looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" Melinda gazed out at the pond, her eyes distant. "When I lost Lily, I felt like a part of me died too. I threw myself into my work trying to fill that void. But meeting you—" She turned back to Amelia, her eyes glistening. "It gave me a chance to help someone Lily cared about, and in doing so, I found a way to heal." Amelia felt tears welling up in her own eyes. "I never thought I'd have someone believe in me the way you do. It changed everything." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in thought. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves above them, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grass. "You know," Melinda said softly, "I think Lily would be proud of you. Of both of us, really." Amelia nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "I hope so. She was so kind to me, even when she was struggling herself. I wish—" "I know," Melinda said, squeezing her hand again. "I wish things had been different for her too. But seeing you now, how far you've come, it helps me feel at peace with her memory." Amelia looked at Melinda, seeing the mixture of joy and sadness in her eyes. She realized that their journey together had brought healing to both of them in ways they never could have imagined. "Thank you," Amelia said again, her voice barely above a whisper. "For being there, for believing in me, for everything." Melinda pulled her into a warm embrace, feeling the weight of their shared experiences, the pain they'd both endured, and the hope they'd found together. In that moment, surrounded by the peaceful beauty of the park, they both felt a sense of healing and renewal that neither had thought possible. The community center buzzed with anticipation as young women filled the chairs, their eyes fixed on Amelia at the front of the room. She stood tall, her hands clasped together to hide their slight trembling. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "I never thought I'd be standing here today," Amelia said, her voice soft but clear. "A few years ago, I was lost, angry, and alone. I didn't believe in second chances because I didn't think I deserved one." As she spoke, her eyes scanned the room, connecting with each face. In the back, she spotted Melinda, who gave her an encouraging nod. "But life has a funny way of surprising you," Amelia continued, a small smile playing on her lips. "I met someone who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself, and that changed everything." She went on to share her story, the struggles, the setbacks, and the small victories that led her to where she was now. The young women listened intently, some nodding in recognition, others wiping away tears. "Your past doesn't define you," Amelia said, her voice growing stronger. "Every day is a chance to start over, to be better. It's not easy, but it's worth it. You're worth it." As Amelia's words filled the room, Melinda stood in the back, her heart swelling with pride. Tears glistened in her eyes as she watched the young woman she had come to love like a daughter inspire others with her strength and resilience. When the session ended, the room erupted in applause. Young women crowded around Amelia, eager to talk and share their own stories. Melinda waited patiently, watching as Amelia offered words of encouragement and hope to each person who approached her. Finally, as the last of the attendees left, Amelia made her way to Melinda. Without a word, they embraced, both feeling the weight of the moment. "You were amazing," Melinda whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Amelia pulled back, her eyes shining. "I couldn't have done it without you." They walked out of the community center hand in hand, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the street. As they strolled, both women felt a sense of peace wash over them. Their journey together had not only changed their own lives but had created ripples of hope that would touch countless others. In that moment, they knew that their bond honored Lily's memory in the most beautiful way possible, by spreading love and offering second chances to those who needed it most. If you enjoyed the story of Judge Melinda and Amelia, I handpicked this next story that will touch your heart. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.